Hey guys, this is Eckhart's Ladder. Hello and welcome to another Star Wars Legends Lore video. On this channel, we spend a lot of time talking about the newest and greatest capital ships in the Star Wars universe, whether that's Legends or canon. However, today we'll be doing the exact opposite and going way back in time to talk about, arguably, the first great capital ship in Star Wars Legends. Now, this does come with, I guess, a fairly major asterisk, and that's the fact that other very ancient civilizations, like the Rakata and presumably the Celestials as well, certainly had their own capital ships. However, those are sort of distinct civilizations, and the vessel we'll talk about today can sort of track its lineage to modern Star Wars vessels. For the record though, the Rakata, as powered by the Starforge, certainly were packing a punch, and if you want to learn more about that era, check out the recent video by Corey Loses, which I'll link down in the description and hopefully, if I remember, in the upper right hand corner. The ships are also pictured in the Dawn of the Jedi comics, if you're interested. So today's video is interesting because it covers this sort of issue of technological stagnation, or in this case, the lack thereof, in the Star Wars universe. Now, to be fair, when people talk about technology not really changing, they're usually referring, say, the Old Republic era versus the Imperial era, while today we're going back over 25,000 years. So, as I've explained in prior videos, after the fall of the Rakata, growing civilizations, especially humans in the core, made advancements in hyperspace technology and went on to form their own interstellar civilizations. The grandest of these would eventually become the Republic, but another very prominent power during the 25,000 years before the Battle of Yavin was Xim the Despot. As you might guess, based on his name, Xim was a cruel man. He waged wars and conquered planets, doing what he would with those and that which he subjugated. Xim, sometimes using abandoned Rakatan technology, was a force for change in the Star Wars universe, creating new tools for killing, like his war droids, which would still be effective during the Yuuzhan Vong invasion. However, more notably, he created what the Essential Guide to Warfare calls perhaps the first true capital ship. Xim's ship, the Eibon Scimitar, certainly carries with it a legendary status, though as the Essential Guide to Warfare explains, it would pale in comparison to modern ships. Here's a quote: "The first great capital ship was the Eibon Scimitar, the legendary flagship of Xim the Despot, destroyed at Vontor. While particularly portrayed as a gargantuan ship and an inspiration for capital ship designs for eons, military historians generally agree the Scimitar would be considered a heavy cruiser at best under the Anaxes War College system." That puts the ship at under a kilometer, and based on what we see with Star Wars ships greatly increasing over size up until about the Galactic Civil War period, I think it's quite likely that it was significantly smaller. Another ship, the Zolochi Dreadnought, came in at about 400 meters, so I'd say 600 to 800 seems about right to me. But it was more than just size which distinguished the Eibon Scimitar and other ancient vessels from those of the modern Star Wars universe. First of all, rather than turbo lasers or even blasters, the ancient warships would have used plasma cannons and also projectile technology, sometimes called slug throwers. Interestingly, this is sort of the same approach the Yuuzhan Vong took when invading the galaxy, and something that the New Republic struggled to adapt to. According to the Essential Guide to Warfare, Xim's ships also generally used torpedoes, concussion missiles, and pulse cannons. All of these weapons, but especially the projectile-based ones, were comparatively more effective in this era because of the rareness of shields and the total lack of projectile shielding. Instead, the first line of defense was usually very thick armor or very basic energy dissipators. Xim's ships, and most likely especially his flagship, the Eibon Scimitar, made pretty significant advancements in these areas. His fleet was armored with Caririum, an alloy which, according to the Essential Guide to Warfare, was a major breakthrough against energy weapons, many of which at this point were still light or laser-based and could be reflected. Key electrical systems were more deeply embedded within the ship, keeping them functioning even when attacked, while projectile weapons were also made more effective due to advancements in ammunition. The Eibon Scimitar was believed to be the largest of Xim's ships, but perhaps second to the vessel that replaced it after the Scimitar's destruction at the Battle of Vontor, which was the Death Knell. Still, because of the lack of particle and energy shielding, a major turbo laser blast from a modern Star Wars vessel would most likely just obliterate this ship, especially given what the Essential Guide to Warfare tells us about the serious advancements in laser, then later turbo laser strength throughout the millennia. Many of Xim's weapons would have also ran up against now pretty sturdy particle shielding, which would have neutralized them almost totally. But until 7,000 years before the Battle of Yavin or so, projectile weapons were pretty common, and I've talked about that in a prior video. One final thing to mention about the physical nature of the ship is that Xim's vessels were typically highly individualized, so there would have most likely been nothing in the fleet which resembled the Eibon Scimitar. Moving to the future though, I mentioned earlier that the Eibon Scimitar was an inspiration for the Invincible class, and if you look at the two ships side by side, that's pretty clear. But the interesting thing about that is that the Dreadnought itself was a mainstay and a long-time member of the Republic military, and despite being introduced over 3,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, would continue service until after the Clone Wars. So that's pretty impressive, and it certainly had an effect on the creation of other ships during its long life. The Invincible, perhaps paying honor to Xim, was itself massive, being over 2,000 meters long. This is especially impressive given its age, and by my estimation was one of the galaxy's most powerful, if not the most powerful ship during its early life. But that's basically all I have to say about Xim and his first capital ship. Interestingly, the new canon has sort of given several nods to Xim, including notably in Solo, but also more on point. The Last Jedi Incredible Cross-Section says that the Supremacy Mega Star Destroyer was larger than even the ancient gargantuan flagships of Xim the Despot. But now, before I leave, let's take a hashtag AskEck question of the day. And today specifically comes from CT2864, who asks, what lightsaber dueling technique would you prefer using if you were Force sensitive? And those of you who are hardcore fans of the channel might know that I don't put much sort of thought into lightsaber dueling techniques specifically. I totally understand why people do like them, and I get that there should be different fighting styles in lightsabers. I've just never been that interested in them, and I've never bothered memorizing them. At least not the specific names and the styles. I like that Mace Windu, for example, is a lot more aggressive, and I like that each character sort of mixes and chooses their own. We get a lot of that discussion in the Darth Bane trilogy. However, if I had to choose just one, I think I would go really defensive, like Obi-Wan. We see Plagueis do something like that, and it allows him to concentrate more on drawing on the Force. I guess that's perhaps a mix of Form 3 and something else, but I also think it's appropriate for a Jedi, which I guess I'd rather be than a Sith, to be, when possible, non-aggressive. But I'll admit, that's one of my blind spots when it comes to Star Wars lore, so I'm curious to hear what you guys think down in the comments. Anyway guys, that's all I have for you today. Until next time, have a great day, and may the Force be with you.